It is better to debate a question without settling it than to settle a question without debating it. So raise your words, not your voice.
I'm Pasan.
And I'm Sayuri.
Good morning, distinguished guests. Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies. Professor Ruanna Besekara, Head, Department of Finance. Heads of other departments, professors, senior lecturers, and colleagues. On behalf of the Department of Finance, University of Kelaniya, we warmly welcome you all for the Lord of the Debates 2022.
To begin the inauguration ceremony, let's pay our gratitude to our university. Thank you. Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. The Lord of the Debates competition is organized by the second year undergraduates under the course module Project Management and Financing. Professor Susima Valigamage and Dr. Chatura Liyanage, being the module managers, have been provided exceptional leadership to the students by monitoring and guiding them to organize an event of this caliber. This humble invitation is for Professor Susima Valigamage, Professor, Department of Finance, to deliver the welcome address.
For good ideas and true innovation, You need human interaction, conflict, argument, and debate. Very good morning to all of you. The interdepartmental debate competition we called Lord of the Debate, which is organized by the second year undergraduates of the Department of Finance annually, with the aim to cultivate the essence of intellectual discussions through logical reasoning and creative argument. Especially, our main aim is to promote and develop interdepartmental harmony within the University of Kelaniya. Since its inceptions in 2013, this interdepartmental debate competitions has uncovered the talents of undergraduates at the various departments at University of Kelaniya. The Lord of the Debate 2022 is organized for the 8th year in the aligning with the Investment Week 2022. This year, the 14 departments from 4 faculties applied for the competition, and event started with the preliminary round on 19th October, second round on 2nd November, semi-final round on 9th November. Today, the grand finale is between 2 departments and the 2 teams from the Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, Department of Human Resource Management and Department of Commerce and Financial Management. They are debating under the topic on IMF bailout is the solution. It's not the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka, which is very relevant and timely topic. So, on behalf of the head of the department, Professor Ruwanna Abesekara, and the team of organizing from the Department of Finance, it's my duty to officially welcome all of you to this event. First, our chief guest today, Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies. We warmly welcome you, sir, to the event. Then we would like to welcome Chair Professor in Finance, Senior Professor R.P.C. Ranjani, and also all the heads of the departments, including Professor Dilruksha Pabewardana from the Department of Accountancy, and also all the staff members representing all other departments. And especially, we are having our panel of judges today. Then I would like to give my warm welcome to Dr. PDCS Darvadasa, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Kelaniya, and also Mr. Shiran Fernando, Chief Economist, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Buddhi Patiraja, Associate Director, BDO Consulting Private Limited. Warmly welcoming 3 of you to the event. And also, today is a very good day for our students, and I would like to warmly welcome the 2 teams from the Department of Human Resource Management and the Department of Commerce and Financial Management, and also other all invitees today, and joining with us here, all my students from first year to final year with us today, and I'm warmly welcoming all of you. Before winding up the session, I need to give some thanks, because it is my duty to appreciate the people behind this event, and then they help us in different ways. I don't want to mention name by name, but thank you all of you who help us on the different ways throughout this journey, starting from the October. Then especially I need to thanks to Professor Ruwanna Abesekara being the head and the leading person behind this, and especially the Jayani Chaturika, Mrs. Jayani Chaturika and Ms. Subani Tennakon being the project consultants to second year student, and the project team who took the challenge with the leader and the other team, and they conducted several fundraising activities, including a food stall to find out the funding for this event. So it is really the highly commitment, their team, and they have highly successed in all the project management events what we expected throughout the course unit. And thank you very much again for all of you. Hoping everyone will enjoy the event. And I wish all the best for the 2 departments who are debating here. and competing here, then thank you for all.
Thank you, madam. The Lord of the Debates is the annual interdepartment debate competition organized by the second year undergraduates of the Department of Finance, parallel to the Investment Week program since 2013. The purpose of this debate competition is to increase awareness, education, engagement of the undergraduates, and enhance the harmony among the departments at the University of Kalani.
Since 2013, the past winners include Department of English, Department of Economics, Department of Commerce and Financial Management, which emerged as winners for 3 consecutive years, Department of Mathematics and Department of Human Resource Management. During the last couple of years, we were unable to conduct the competition owing to COVID-19. This year, 12 departments spanned across 4 faculties entered the battle for the title Lord of the Debates 2022. Today, we are eagerly waiting to see who will emerge as the champions at this grand finale.
Let us now cherish the moments of the initial rounds.
Leadership is not about title or designation. It is about impact, influence, and inspiration. We are very grateful to have Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, as a chief guest of the Lord of the Debates 2022. He is the main driving force behind every event and activity of the faculty. This cordial invitation is to Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, to address the gathering. So would you please oblige?
Very good morning to all of you. Professor Ruwan Abesekara, Head, Department of Finance. Professor Dilrukshi Abewardena, Head, Department of Accountancy. And the Chair Professor Chitra Ranjani, all the staff members of the faculty, and our panel of judges and students. So it is a great privilege to address you all in this healthy occasion, because we have named long ago that extracurricular activities, this sort of events. But what I feel now, it's something like co-curricular activities. So this sort of activities are becoming compulsory requirements of degree programs. So every day we are going with classroom sessions that may be a presentation, assignment, discussion. But at the same time, so we have to develop a graduate which is requested by the industry, which is requested by this economy. So in the developing their social and emotional skills play a great role. So in that endeavor, I want to thank Department of Finance and especially the Student Association and the second year students for organizing this event. And the, as Professor Susima mentioned, the two members, so those who guided all these students. Because if you think that the degree will do everything for you, the degree or any testimonials with your name, that won't happen. So even in management faculty, every year we are going with more than 1,000 students. To be exact, last year we got 1,051. So don't think that you will get job opportunities for these entire 1,000 students once you completed your degree. So you should have some specialty, uniqueness among others. Otherwise you won't get opportunity. Not only in Kelaniya, so we know that more than 30,000 or 40,000 students are entering to university. So that may be in management, that may be in science, that may be in arts or any stream. So day by day the competition going very competitive. It's not only government universities, even we can have some foreign universities, private universities, most of. So then so you have to develop all the skills which is requested by industry. The argument on points, critical thinking, and your assertiveness, we hope that will develop through these activities, is all count when you are going to the industry. Even we know that as a country we are not going in a healthy situation, good conditions are not there. Then in future years, maybe next 4 years, maybe next 5 years, the situation may be worse than today's context. So with all these requested, we need quality and competent youth to take the responsibility of this country. So take this opportunity as a preparation for that. Need not to be in the Department of Finance, need not to be in the Faculty of Commerce and Management. You may be in any department or any faculty, but you have to develop your skill. Whether you are doing science, arts or anything, the soft skill part is leading. So once again, on that endeavor, I want to thank Department of Finance and the Finance Student Association for organizing this event, and especially Ms. Jayani Chaturika and Subhani Tennakon for guiding all these students, and the Professor Ruwanna Besekara for leading the entire thing. Thank you. We hope that we can have a good debate here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable thoughts with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, we shall now remark the commencement of the Inter-Department Debate Competition, the Lord of the Debates 2022. Topic for today's debate is IMF bailout is the solution, is not the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. The proposing team is the Department of Human Resource Management, and the topic is IMF bailout is the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. And the opposing team is the Department of Commerce and Financial Management, and the topic is IMF bailout is not the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka.
Now, let me introduce the proposing and opposing teams for the day. First, representing the Department of Human Resource Management, Rama Suri, Buddhini Ruvani, Lasandri De Silva, Hashini Maheshika. And representing the Department of Commerce and Financial Management, Dinurelianage, S. Sabarja, B. S. Divitana, K. Kavindya Dulangi. Dear teams, please take your respective seats.
Now, I would like to introduce our honorable panel of judges of the Lord of the Debates 2022. First, I would like to introduce Dr. P.D.C.S. Dharmadasu, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Kelaniya. She has obtained her PhD in Advanced Macroeconomics from Saga University, Japan in 2015 and has obtained her MSc in Economics from the same university in 2012. Further, she has obtained Bachelor of Arts First Class Honours in Economics at University of Peradeniya in 2005. Prior to joining University of Kelaniya, Dr. Dharmadasa has been a visiting fellow at Saga University, Japan from 2015 to 2017. She has also served as a project intern at the Institute of Policy Studies, Colombo in 2008. Further, she has also served at the Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Peradeniya as an assistant lecturer during 2006 to 2008. Dr. Dharmadasa's teaching specialties include macroeconomics, computer application for economics, and welfare economics. Additionally, she has also engaged in research supervision for Doctor of Philosophy and Master of Philosophy. Her research interest areas include, but is not limited to, monetary policy, employment and unemployment, banking sector credit growth, fintech, exchange rate, and interest rates.
Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Shiran Fernando. Mr. Shiran, as a Chief Economist at the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, leads the Economic Intelligence Unit, which is the focal point of the Chamber for Economic Research and Policy Advocacy. He was previously a member of the Steering Committee on Economic Policy of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Shiran previously held the role as the lead economist at Senior Product Head at Frontier Research. He has been part of numerous economic and business forums, both locally and internationally, as a speaker, panelist, and a moderator. Mr. Shiran is also a contributing writer to LMD's monthly Economic Outlook column and alumnus of U.S. International Visitor Leadership Program. Mr. Shiran is also a member of the Investment Advisory Panel of the SoftLogic Investment and was recently appointed to the board of Biodiversity Sri Lanka.
Next, I would like to introduce Ms. Buddhi Pathiraja, Associate Director, BDO Consulting Private Limited. Ms. Buddhi has over 17 years of experience in the audit, tax, and consultancy sectors, including business restructuring, valuations, due diligences, and strategic planning. She was part of the IFRS advisory team of BDO and handled IFRS convergence projects for many affluent clients. Most recent assignments carried out by Ms. Buddhi includes government as well as private sector institutions spanning all sectors. She is an honorary director Board Secretary at ICLOF Lanka Guarantee Private Limited since 2018. Ms. Biddi was the winner at the CA Best Speaker competition and first runner-up at the AAT Best Speaker competition in 2018. She was adjudged the Best Debater at the AAT Debater in 2021. Her proficiency in public speaking is evident in the various club level, area level, and division level competitions. She took part in the Toastmasters arena. She was placed third in the International Speech Competition of Division E 2021-2022. I cordially invite our honorable panel of judges to take their respective seats.
Next, we will brief the basic rules and regulations of the Lord of the Debates 2022. Each team has 2 or 3 constructive speeches and 2 to 3 rebuttal speeches. The proposing teams gives the first constructive speech and the rebuttals alternate, opposing, proposing, opposing, proposing. The proposing has both the first and last speeches of the debate. When worded as proposition of policy, the topic requires the proposing team to support some specified action by some particular individual or group. The proposing team has right to make any reasonable definition of each of the terms of the proposition. If the opposing team challenges the reasonableness of a definition of alternate, the judge must accept the definition of the team that shows better grounds for its interpretation of the term. The proposing team must advocate everything required by the topic itself. No revision of proposition of team is permitted during the debate.
The person who asserts must prove. In order to establish an assertion, the team must support it with enough evidence and logic to convince an intelligent but previously uninformed person that it is more reasonable to believe the assertion than to disbelieve it. Facts must be accurate. Visual materials are permissible, and once introduced, they become available for the use of opponents if desired. First speaker will get 6 minutes, and the remaining speakers will get 5 minutes for their speeches. 6 minutes will be given to wrap up at the end. The timer will display 1 more minute board. When the speaker is left with 1 minute, at the end of the last minute, the timer will display time's up board and will ring the bell. Each speaker will receive a grace period of 30 seconds to wrap up. There will be no indication by the timer regarding these 30 seconds. If the speaker exceeds these 30 seconds, it will impact the marks of the speaker. Now, we would like to hand over the session to our honorable panel of judges, and we wish all the very best to our finalists.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here as well. We can commence the debate. All the best.
Are we still going to pluck off the leaves? Well, no. I'm going to focus on the root. Leaves, root, will tell you all about the tree today. Honorable judges, ladies and gentlemen, IMF bailout is the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Before we get into it, let me give the definitions of the keywords of today's topic. First, the major role player of the topic, IMF. The International Monetary Fund is a major financial agency and an international financial institution consisting of 190 countries as its member, focusing on 3 critical missions, which is furthering international monetary cooperation, encouraging the expansion of trade and economic growth, and discouraging policies that would harm prosperity. And then moving on to the subject of today's topic, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, as we all know, has been a developing country then and now. Currently, it is fighting for its survival as an open market in the international world that it is fighting against. The most crucial element of today's topic, current economic crisis of Sri Lanka. So according to the World Bank in Sri Lanka, it is defined that currently Sri Lanka faces an unsustainable debt, severe balance of payment crisis leading to a negative impact on growth and poverty. The real GDP is expected to fall by 9.2% in 22 and further 4.9% by 2023. Year-on-year inflation 64.3% in August, and this is largely due to the high rapid inflation rate of food, which is 93.7%. And then we present the map to come out of this trapped maze of economic crisis. The map, IMF bailout. So let me define what IMF bailout is. This is IMF assisting countries hit by crisis by providing them financial support to create breathing room as they implement adjustment policies to restore economic stability and growth. So the bailout conditionality is IMF provide financial assistance to countries only if they agree to implement a series of economic policy reforms to revive and maintain a sustainable economic growth rate in the long term. I repeat, in the long term for a sustainable economic growth. With that said and spotlighted, let me enter into our base today. IMF bailout is the solution of the current economic crisis. About the tree, before that, there is the fuel crisis. We all experience the pressure of inflation, lack of food, lack of fuel. We don't have to define or explain it. We all lived through it. We experienced every segment of it. And thus, we are not going to look at only the surface issues we've got here. We are going to take you through the root of this tree of economic crisis, deterioration of law. We propose, as our base today is going to be IMF bailout addresses not at the surface outline of what we say is economic crisis, but to the root where this all occurred, the deterioration of the root of law. IMF bailout focuses on addressing the root cause of the current economic crisis. While it tries to treat, it also treats the surface issues. So this is not addressing the symptoms, but the disease itself, where all are to be corrected from the root. Adding on to our base further, IMF bailout is not a consumption-oriented solution. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a solution with investment, a solution of investment and production that focuses on addressing yesterday's problem, correcting yesterday's mistakes, and then today's issues are to be overcome by this conditionality of IMF bailout. And then it focuses on the future to build a sustainable economical growth while enhancing tomorrow, today, and correcting yesterday as well. Here's the challenge to the opposing team to give us a solution that addresses yesterday, today, and tomorrow, a sustainable economic growth, the change that we as a country require. IMF bailout is ready to give out that. Our first speaker would be providing further details on what IMF bailout is and the conditions and how they address each and every solution, while the second speaker would be addressing the successibility of IMF bailout, bringing out the examples from the international context, just like the countries like Sri Lanka, which has faced the similar economic crisis. And our fourth speaker will further emphasize on the beneficiaries' accessibility, why IMF bailout is the solution rather than any other solution in the current economic crisis. So, and that is why IMF bailout is the solution of the current economic crisis, addressing the root cause focusing on the economic growth of tomorrow, sustainability, and it all addresses the most important thing, the management we require. IMF bailout is the solution of the current economic crisis.
Is IMF bailout our savior or our enemy? Let's find out. Honorable panel of judges, members of the proposing team and members of the House. Today, we are here to prove that IMF bailout is not the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. So, I'll directly move on to defining the key terms we have in our topic today. So, our proposing team brought the definitions for IMF and we agree with that. Then, what is International Monetary Fund bailout means? What is a bailout actually? Bailout basically means is taking a loan in the instance where we have defaulted on our debt repayments. Then, what is a bailout? It is failing to fulfill an obligation, especially to repay a loan. Then, what is a solution? It is bringing or coming to an end of a given problem or into a state of discontinuity of a given problem. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an end to a given problem. Then, what is economic crisis? It is a situation in which a country's economy deteriorates significantly, which will most likely to experience a falling of GDP, a drying up of liquidity, and rising or falling of prices due to inflation or deflation. This economic crisis can take the form of recession or depression. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is the crisis we are facing right now as a country? What went wrong in Sri Lanka? There are various aspects. The first one would be hyperinflation. Ladies and gentlemen, we see every day prices are hiking up, and in terms of food, vegetables, fuel, transportation, medicine, almost everything. And then also we are currently experiencing a consumer price growth of 66%, which people cannot afford. Then on the other hand, interest rates, which were used to be a single digit number and now amounting to 30 to 35%, making it difficult to borrow loans for businessmen, entrepreneurs, and all the other citizens. Then, from the other hand, currency devaluation. US dollar were used to be just 200 rupees, and now it's close to 400 rupees, ladies and gentlemen. Also, we are having a huge shortage of foreign currency as well. Then, which has affected the country's import, which has led to the sanctioning of vehicle imports and many other goods and services. Then on the other hand, increasing poverty, health and safety poverty, and digital poverty as well. Then the final aspect is having a budget deficit of 2,058 billion rupees recorded in 2021 term. And also they went on to inflationary methods such as printing of trillions of money and also borrowing more loans while having a huge sovereign debt of nearly 50 billion US dollars, which are defaulted as well. So ladies and gentlemen, now the current economic situation crisis of Sri Lanka is clear. But what are the causes for this issue actually? Is it because of the previous government's decisions taken, like previous 2-3 year governments? No, ladies and gentlemen. It goes far way back than the last 2-3 years. So we can see reasons such as public fund mismanagement and corruption. Government spending billions of dollars in white elephant projects such as Hambantota Harbour, Wattala Airport, Lotus Tower, and other highways and etc., which were completed at higher costs irrespective of the regime ruled. And also having economic policies changing over and over again, the fertilizer issues, cutting taxes, and as external shocks we can consider Easter bomb attack and corona pandemic as well. So now we can clearly see the issues of our country and as well as the causes for this economic crisis. But will the IMF bailout be the solution for this, ladies and gentlemen? Will it bring an end to this crisis? No, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely no. So as the opposing side, we are here to prove that with 4 main arguments. So as the first speaker, I have defined the topic and I have set out the base for the today's debate. Then our first main argument being how bailout conditionality hinders the autonomy, and the second being losing the sovereign rights as a country, which both the points will be elaborated by our second speaker. And then the third point being a negative transformation of the economic system of the country, which will be elaborated by our third speaker, and our fourth speaker will be elaborating about the moral hazard while focusing on rebutting the proposing team's arguments. So it is clear that our base stands for the day, ladies and gentlemen, that IMF bailout package is not the solution. It's not means to end the current economic crisis in our Sri Lanka. Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning, honorable judges, ladies and gentlemen. IMF bailout is the solution for the current economic crisis. IMF bailout, do you have any idea about what is this IMF bailout? I will explain you by a simple example. think your farmers and your harvest for this year is very low. So what I'm going to do, I will give you some rice as your loan. And also, together with that, I'm giving you some advisors and also I'm assisting you to generate some more cultivation in the next year. So this will ensure that you will be definitely giving me back my rice loan, and also you will ensure that you will also have something to consume in the next year as well without going to here and there and asking. So this is the situation or scenario which is very similar to the IMF bailout situation, because IMF will give these bailout packages for the countries who are suffering from economic or financial corruptions, with ensuring that these countries will definitely go to a sustainable development in economic and financial side during this bailout season. So this is simply a bailout. So we'll see, as our first speaker said, there are some policies or conditions that have been given on this bailout. Especially, we'll see what are the conditions which they imposed for Sri Lanka. Before that, I want to give your attention for this chart. What is this? At a glance, you can say that this is just a tree. But I'm renaming this tree as the economic crisis in Sri Lanka. We'll go to the bottom of the tree. This is the root of the tree. That means this whole tree is going to be grow because of these roots. Now, can you say what are the root causes of the economic crisis in Sri Lanka? You can just say just because of the Easter bomb attack or the restructuring of taxation, or maybe you can say because of the nearly thing which was happened, the COVID-19 virus. But that's not the core concept or the root concept for this economic crisis. It's the deterioration of the law. And the IMF has clearly researched and searched about this deterioration of law. And also in their conditions, they have said that if you want our bailout, first of all, you must make a good rule which was governing the financial system of your country, because there are so many loopholes in the financial system in Sri Lanka. Because of these loopholes, there are so many corruptions, so many misleading activities, and also especially there is no transparency in the economy in Sri Lanka. We have seen it, the CBSL bond issues, and also we have seen it when other countries are giving some loans for Sri Lanka, some loans are not reported in the reports even. We can't see what has happened for those loans. So because of that, the main reason for this economic crisis, there is no any law which governs the financial stability of Sri Lanka. So that is the first condition which was imposed by the IMF on Sri Lanka, and I think it's a very advantageable and fruitful decision that they have taken. And we'll see the upper side. This is the place where we can see the macroeconomic issues: financial system crisis, debt crisis, and BOP crisis. So we'll see what is this BOP crisis, balance of payment crisis. In this balance of payment crisis, we have only very small amount of dollars nowadays in Sri Lanka. Because of that, we can't import the most important essential products to Sri Lanka. Because of that, we all experience it in long hours, long queues for fuel queues and gas queues, just because of this BOP crisis. And we can see here the BOP deficit has been increasing very accurate, accelerating rate, and that's the BOP crisis. And the other thing is the debt crisis. Nowadays, the debt crisis of Sri Lanka is going to be like nearly 50 billion. Because of all those things, and also the financial crisis, we have heard that so many news are going that the banking system of the Sri Lanka will be collapsed, and it will be very adverse effect for the Sri Lankan economy. IMF has clearly researched and searched about these crises in Sri Lanka. These are the main three crises they have selected, and they have searched, and they have given some other conditions to overcome these crises. The first one is they have given some tax reforms to increase the government revenue, and also increase the social spending, improve social safety networks, and also cost recovery based on pricing for fuel and electricity, financial consolidation, and also market determined flexible exchange rate, fiscal transparency, good banking system. And also we have given some thing to your opposing team to say what are the solutions. If this IMF is not the solution, what are the solutions? You didn't answer for that, so we expect an answer from that. So I will conclude my speech. IMF bailout is the only solution for the economic crisis. Thank you.
A very good morning to my honorable panel of judges, members of the proposing team and members of the House. Today, the title in hand is IMF bailout is not the solution for current economic crisis of Sri Lanka. Our proposing team member asked that, what is the solution for the economic crisis then? Well, the title is clear. We are not discussing about the solution here. We are here to argue that IMF bailout is not the solution, ladies and gentlemen. And another question is that the economic stability, our second speaker and even the first speaker was telling about the economic stability of the country. Well, our economy is very different from the IMF reforms. IMF policies have been not tailor-made to our country, which means a country like Sri Lanka cannot implement the economic policy reforms because of the financial, economical and social, cultural freedom of Sri Lanka will be affected. We will become puppets of the IMF bailout. And about the economic crisis, what is the root cause of economic crisis here? Well, not just one. It is a series of events from Easter bomb attack to COVID-19 to so many things which led to this economic crisis. It's just not a sudden thing which happened. We took loans and we were pay the loans, and then we took loans to repay the loans. What will be happening then? Yesterday we took a loan, and today we took a loan to repay the loan, and tomorrow we'll be paying the loan again and again. So is this prosperity, ladies and gentlemen? No, it is not prosperity. It will be a very disadvantage to a country like Sri Lanka, especially to a country like Sri Lanka, because we have come to the rock bottom of economy nowadays. Our country, just like I mentioned before, our country would lose the freedom of everything. Our autonomy would be affected by so many components, from financial, social, economical, cultures, and so many things like that. And we have to understand that we have gone to IMF bailout as the last resort. In fact, countries like Argentina, Russia, and so many other countries were reluctant to do so. Why? They will be solvency autonomy will be affected by it. What is meant by solvency autonomy, ladies and gentlemen? Solvency autonomy. Yes, solvency autonomy is the inability to pay debts. And about the conditionality. Now, my very first argument, just like our lead speaker explained, there are 4 pillars of argument for our debate. One is the bailout conditionality hinders the autonomy, and second one is the restriction of sovereignty. Rights of our country will be heightened. So I will be focusing on these 2 points today. So what is conditionality? IMF, when we are taking loans from IMFs, we should oblige to their terms and conditions. We cannot go our own way and say, hey, look here, we have to take loans and we have to oblige to this, we can do whatever we want. No, we can't do that. We should oblige to, to their standard, which means if the intentions are wrong, we would be affected by that. So, my next point is that the autonomy, and not to mention here, financial assistance in the sense, we are getting 2.9 billion US dollars as the financial assistance. And guess what? The trade deficit is 6.39 billion, ladies and gentlemen, which means we wouldn't be able to repay, we wouldn't be able to come up with the trade deficit itself. And let's assume that even if that's not the case, and the interest is high, we cannot be even able to pay the interest here. And furthermore, we'll be receiving this 2.39 billion as a series of payment. You won't get it overnight. You will get it between a 4-year period. So about the economic reforms suggested by the IMF: 1. Devaluation. 2. Increasing tariffs. 3. Encouraging foreign investments and means suggested by the IMF. And 4. Privatizing state-owned sectors such as health and here, everything is free market oriented and it is not suitable to a country like Sri Lanka. And yeah, I would like to conclude my argument saying that IMF bailout is not the solution for current economic crisis of Sri Lanka. Over to you.
Good morning, honorable judges and ladies and gentlemen. My first speaker and second speaker has explained to say why exactly IMF is the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Let me bring out some examples from around the world to prove our topic today. Let's go back to 1991, India. India had the same situation as us. They also thought they can solve the problem, but no. At the end, they had to go to IMF to get a solution and come out of their economic crisis. Next, Jordan. This country is the best example that I could give to say that IMF will actually help you to come out of an economic crisis and not only stop there, but will also ensure your economic growth. Here, through a very little time, actually 3 years, they have made sure to come out of their crisis, and now it's one of the most successful economic, it has one of the most successful economic systems. Next, we have Serbia. Let me quote, this says, Serbia completes successful IMF program. Let me quote from the article. The program has done much better than expected, overperforming many of its macroeconomic goals, said James Rofe, head of the IMF Serbia team. This country also had a lot of challenges, mainly because it's a small country, it has many challenges with the economic system, and IMF has come out to help them to bring the economic system into one of the successful systems today. And these are just a few examples, ladies and gentlemen. There are so many examples out there, and we only have a few examples brought, but remember, this is just a few. Moving on. If we are actually going ahead with IMF, since IMF is also an international body, it gives a certification, it ensures our investors to say that, don't worry, your investment is safe with us. I'm sorry to say this, but Sri Lanka is corrupted. Our country has a very corrupted system. If I borrow, this is an example, I'm just taking rough figures. If I borrowed let's say 100,000 rupees from her, in between, half of it will go into our pockets, and actually half of it will only go for the final project. At the end, that project also doesn't have any ROI. We know such projects, so that's the problem, which is why we don't have foreign investments in our country. Also another reason why our economy is not growing, because we need these investments, and if we are with IMF, these investors also know that we cannot forge them, we cannot do manipulation stuff and then put some money in our pockets, because they are gonna audit our system, which brings to my next point. IMF is actually monitoring us from the start to the end, because they have a separate team for this system where they will be monitoring each and every step of ours, especially for a country like us. As I mentioned, since we don't have any transparency in our system, we need this transparency system placed by the IMF. Moving on. I think our opposition team talked about where our lifestyle will be a bit affected with tax and everything. Don't worry, IMF has the solutions for them as well, ladies and gentlemen. Because IMF is not going to put us into a dark hole and be like, okay, I'll come out of it. No, they are going to be there to support us, because this clearly states tax collection was very low, but now new taxes that are collected must come from high income earners so that the poor and vulnerable would not be impacted. So they do have a clear system, not like our politicians. They have a proper structured way of putting the tax enforcements. Next, I think our second speaker, the second speaker mentioned that that they do not agree with the IMF bailouts. Well, I think our opposition team can also go to the parliament, because our parliament itself has agreed on this. And also they said, we are not here to discuss about solutions. Then what are we here to debate about? Because if IMF is not the solution, we need a solution to this country. Because we are currently suffering, we are going through a very low situation, so we need solutions. So we kindly reminding our challenge again, we would like to hear your solutions for this economic crisis. With that, I end my speech. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable panel of judges, the members of the proposing team, and members of the House. Let me begin by stating that there were a few notions put forward by our proposing team that I would very much like to counter. Starting off with, it is very devastating to see that even though our second speaker clearly mentioned that the solution of what the current economic crisis is not about, what we are focusing here is not whether the solution is something else. We are focusing on whether the IMF bailout is the solution of the current economic crisis or not. And that is the scope of this debate. Moving on, I would like to counter the first speaker's arguments brought forward. Starting off with, the first speaker failed to mention one of the key terms in the debate, that would be solution. Failed to give an accurate description of what the key term here is solution. As our first speaker clearly defined, solution is discontinuity of the problem. That means you end the problem. And then failed to mention the amount that we will be receiving from the IMF bailout. And that too, let's keep in mind that the IMF bailout program is on a staff level agreement still. And that too we are getting 2.9 billion US dollars over the span of 4 years. As our second speaker clearly mentioned, we won't be getting it all at once. It will be monitored, and then we will be given the amount. And when the second speaker also mentioned the conditions that IMF has imposed on us, one of the key conditions is before we get the bail, we should restructure our debt with our creditors. This is a key point here. So if we don't get the IMF bailout, and our concern here is our current economic crisis, then how can you clearly define the term current here? Since you have no idea when you will be getting the bail even, because first you have to restructure the debt. Keep in mind here, the restructuring of debt is not as simple as it appears to be. We have a range of creditors. Our creditors are of hedge funds, mutual funds, China, Japan, India. So and also if you were on track with the IMF's latest press release, it is clearly mentioned that even though Sri Lanka is expecting the bailout program to be finalized by this December, that is within like 1 week's time, we haven't restructured our debt yet, and on top of that, the range of creditors, the deviation is going to affect us hugely. We haven't even been given the confirmation, and even if you can see from this news article, which was this is just last week's paper, it says talks with IMF, India, China, hopeful. Hopeful doesn't translate to agreement, and clearly defined when you will be getting the bail. So apart from that, one of the key terms mentioned on the agreement with the IMF is how this will affect our growth, how this will sustain our growth in the future. So this will mean the economic growth has to do with the trade balance. Our current trade balance is standing at a negative 6.39 billion. And keep in mind again, we are only, even though if we get it, we are getting only 2.9 billion. So the sustainability is in question. So having my argument made clear on that perspective, let me bring forward my own argument, a clear-cut argument. I have to mention, ladies and gentlemen, one of the key conditions that it was imposed, as the proposing team mentioned, the empirical evidences. If you look at the empirical evidences, one of the key factors for Pakistan is devaluation of their currency, and on top of that, privatization of their government-based institutes, which includes not only the loss incurring, but also the profit-making institutes. So what does this mean to us? So what does privatization mean? You give the complete control to a profit-oriented organization. And what country are we? I hope you are aware that we are a welfare state. I hope the proposing team agrees with me that we are a welfare state. So as it mentions, the welfare state, as a welfare state, our priority is to maximize benefit, not increase income. So moving on, when our key factors are privatized, such as education, what would that lead to? Wouldn't that make us hypocritical? As we are standing here getting the free education. I will reach my conclusion by mentioning that Hilton, Waters Edge, Telecom, Sri Lanka Insurance, Sri Lankan Airlines are all to be privatized soon, and which means that the IMF recommendations have already started. This won't be the solution to the problem. Thank you.
further, let me prove that IMF bailout is the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. So, our entire team have shown that why we should go with IMF bailout. Not only for investors, investments and audit monetary. Also, we get dollars and reasonable period to pay our loans back, and also there will be trust current, as we all know, there is no trust current management system in Sri Lanka. So investors are going to trust our management system when we are going with IMF bailout. So if the scholars of the country agree with that we should go with IMF bailout solution, there is no other solution. So how can you all say no to the IMF bailout? So ladies and gentlemen, that's the funny thing that we are hearing now. So according to the first speaker today, he mentioned that we have to give, the solution is what? We have to give an end to the problem. Yes, of course. That's why we have shown in our base that we are not addressing only the things that we can see in the country. We are addressing the root of this cause, which is violating the law. That's the root cause for this current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. If we are addressing the root cause, definitely we can end the solutions. And also, they have mentioned that why there is a lack of fuel, food, and also power. There is no medicine in Sri Lanka. Yes, we agree with this. Those things can only see, those are the things that only we can see in Sri Lanka in the current economic crisis, because many of us, we have also stayed in that fuel in petrol stations and in food cities to get food. Yes, those are the only things that we can see, but there is more deeper, there is a root cause in this problem. So we have to address that root cause to solve this problem. And also, our first speaker, he have mentioned that printing money and money corruption, about the money corruption. Yes, of course. We all Sri Lankan, today we are asking, we need a system change. We should change this system. But how? Any of us still didn't get any step to change this system. But still we are asking, we need a system change. We have to change this system. Ladies and gentlemen, with the IMF bailout conditions, we are going to change this system in Sri Lanka, because IMF bailout is targeting a country without corruption. A country without corruption. And ladies and gentlemen, also, if the IMF is not the solution, the second speaker, she have mentioned that IMF is not the solution. All of them are telling that IMF is not the solution. Okay then, what's the solution? Without having any solution, can we say no to IMF? That's a joke. So, and also, our second speaker, she have mentioned about the loan that we have taken from the other countries. Ladies and gentlemen, see how we have taken loans from other countries. Are they giving loans because they are our friends? No, they are giving loans because they are targeting a benefit. They are asking a benefit from that loans. They are not just giving the loans. Take the loan and do whatever you want. They are asking benefits. But now the current situation in Sri Lanka, we cannot repay our loans. So because of that, we have to pay those loans by giving our assets for them. So is that the solution? And also, our opposing team, they have mentioned the conditionality. In their base, they have mentioned the conditionality. Ladies and gentlemen, if we go to a bank, and can we ask a loan without condition? No, right? Even if we go to the if we are going to the Game Poli Mudalali, and can we ask him that, please give me a loan without condition? No, right? This is IMF, ladies and gentlemen. Without having condition, can we ask loan from them? And also, their biggest problem is monitoring the system. So, is that bad monitoring? Is that bad, the monitoring system? No. We should have a monitoring system for the dollars that we are having from the IMF bailout. And also, here, yes, okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have mentioned that it's clear, our base is clear, IMF bailout is the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
If you have a heart problem, what will you do? Take 2 pills of Panadols and chill, or take a proper treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what the proposition team said in this morning. Not to treat the root cause, take a bandage. A very good morning to the extreme panel of judges, the proposition team members, and the member of house. Without being late, I would go for the rebuttals. My second speaker and the third speaker of proposition team said that there is no law, there is no financial law, there is corruption, and also that because of this, they cannot get economic stability. Ladies and gentlemen, they cannot get economic stability. So they suggest they can get economic stability while through IMF bailout. Let me go through with an example, ladies and gentlemen. In 1990s, there was a Asia crisis, right? So because of this Asia crisis, the faced countries were Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, and Malaysia. So what has happened? What is the cause? These countries got short-term foreign loans, so they were unable to pay that obligations, right? 3 countries went to IMF bailout. That is, the nightmare has happened, ladies and gentlemen. IMF suggested to cut down the government expenditure. What happened? Can you really imagine? South Korea was drastically down. The unemployment rate was significantly high. If you well aware about that, the employees got suicide because they lost jobs, right? And they lost their dignity. Why? Because of this IMF stupid, they lose their jobs. And also, I would like to say this, Malaysia, they refused this IMF bailout, ladies and gentlemen. They get internal reforms, then Malaysia got the chance, and they came out from the economic crisis. They never needed IMF bailout. And that is exactly what we are. Don't need IMF bailout. We can get internal economic reforms, and we can get through this. Moving into my second social safety. If you can get social network, safety network, without autonomy, without independence, without sovereign right, how can you say that you can get social safety network? We are acting like puppets, men. Do you know that? We are acting like puppets, and then say we are getting social safety network. And also, I want to say the donor countries have the voting power. So US get 16% of voting power. The donor country get voting power. We have to act according to their plan. Ladies and gentlemen, then how can you say that we can get social safety network among through IMF bailout? It is hilarious, ladies and gentlemen. Moving into my third point, third speaker and fourth speaker repeatedly mentioned that they can get out from the corruption because of the IMF bailout, they can get out from the corruption because of the IMF bailout. If you know about this, because of the IMF bailout, will face moral hazard because the corruptions will give the fuel to the moral hazard. And also, I want to ask, they said they can audit, they can accountable for this, but who will be accountable for politicians' account in all around the world? You or me? Who will be the accountable for that? There is so many here. That is why we exactly say we need internal economic reforms to eradicate the corruptions. Moving into my point, I want to raise against the proposition team, moral hazard. If you are well aware about moral hazard, it is exactly we will go through IMF bailout, then there is significant mismanagement, corruption, because they don't get accountability for their behaviors. And also there is Goldenberg scandal in what is happening in 1990s in Kenya. So there is significant disadvantages because of IMF bailout. Because of IMF bailout, we will face moral hazard, ladies and gentlemen. So with this rebuttals and my points, I have concluded my session. So IMF bailout is not for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. It is just a bandage. Thank you. Over to you.
You can start. Dinuka, you can start.
Esteemed panel of judges and members of the House, let me straightly go into rebuttals. So, our proposing team mentioned that due to strict guidelines through the IMF bailout package, that it will reduce the public fund mismanagement and corruption. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you this. Throughout the Sri Lankan history of 70 years, we have been taking loans from the IMF 16 times. With that, we have been, are we being able to end the corruption in our country, ladies and gentlemen? No, right? So, 16 times taking 16 times taking loans, and still the corruption is there. If you are saying that corruption will eradicate with these strict guidelines, then why still our country is corrupted? And also, it will in fact will not end the corruption, actually it rewards the corruption, as explained by our speakers. Then, as our fourth speaker mentioned, the Kenya example, the Goldenberg scandal has, through that bailout package given by the IMF, Kenya has misused the bailout amount. So, ladies and gentlemen, how we can say that our country politicians will not misuse the bailout package, the 2.9 billion? And then, from the second speaker's side, they said it will have the economic stability. So is it really? Let's see. Like as explained by our third speaker, we are having a vast range of creditors to settle. So as explained, by December we cannot come into agreements as quickly. So it will take time. And on the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, just think, our main borrowers are China and India. So when these countries are like they are, you know, they are not friends of IMF. They are not very much friends. So we know that. So then, whether will they accept all the agreements set by the IMF, the conditions, and then they will reduce their, they will restructure our debts and will support likewise? No, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot hope for that. So it will take time. So it is not a solution. And this proposing team was saying it is a long-term solution, it will have sustainability, but how can we really say that this proposing team is just saying facts, just saying it will have a long-term impact, but it is not, ladies and gentlemen. As explained, our fourth speaker explained the Asian example, where Malaysia didn't get the bailout, they rejected, and then they went into economic sustainability. While other countries, Indonesia, Philippines, and those countries fell into more economic crisis. Then, elaborating on internal economic reforms. Now, when people protested, reforms took place because government was independent. Then, but if IMF conditions, where's the freedom? So, that's what happens, as our second speaker elaborated, with IMF conditionality, the bailout conditionality, we lose our freedom, we lose our autonomy, we lose the sovereign rights, because then, as our members celebrated, we will be acting as puppets in the world. And as a country with lots of resources, we will be stretched in the battle of power in the world between USA, China, and India. So that's what will be happen. Then the third speaker mentioned there are a lot of examples, but they are presenting only few examples. But yes, there are only few examples which we have seen IMF bailout packages being successful. From 1980 to 2015, out of 763 bailout programs, only 512 programs were interrupted, 512 were failed. So how can we say that? And even in Pakistan also, an Asian country, as explained, they took 22 loans in their history, and still what happened? They went into more trouble. Then you talked about progressive taxes So as a commerce student, you should very well know that progressive taxes cause tax evasion. Then, my dear members, IMF can monitor the government. How can they track every individual tax flies? So, and they are saying it's kind of they are showing now that is a tailor-made system, but it is not, ladies and gentlemen. What happens is every time they just think about the monetary terms we have. They do not really care about the social culture we have, the education system and the healthcare system, because we run as a welfare state, ladies and gentlemen. But these foreign countries, they do not run as a welfare state. So they have their education system, healthcare system, everything is privatized. So when we agree to the conditions of the bailout program, definitely it might have the condition that privatize the government sector. So as mentioned, when privatized, we will be privatizing the profit earning sectors as well. Then also, just think for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, if we privatize our Sri Lankan education system, what will happen in the future? How we can have economic sustainability? Then, and also definitely mention the voting power. So, and then, as the opposing team, we were very clear in our scope, and that we are good on the base that IMF bailout not means to end. It is not the solution for the current economic crisis. They are just only saying it has long-term impacts, but through our examples we have shown that it is not a long-term solution. It's not a solution at all, ladies and gentlemen. So we our stance is clear that IMF bailout package is not the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
There is a heart patient, and if I am IMF, I'm going to give this Panadol to her. Is that how we defined IMF bailout? No. I am going to treat the heart, which is the root cause, deterioration of law. Dear fourth speaker, we spoke about the root, the disease, not the symptom. A reminder again. To begin with, the second speaker said that the conditionality of IMF bailout was not made for Sri Lanka. Here we provide the proof where the IMF members visited Sri Lanka. This is customized recommendations for Sri Lanka, providing every aspect of the crisis which was analyzed, assessed and evaluated by the IMF members for the current crisis of Sri Lanka. And then the third speaker did mention that restructuring a foreign debt with China and other countries is not that easy. Ladies and gentlemen, here we have another proof. Let me quote that, which include countries like China, India, Japan, that debt sustainability will be restored. IMF management and executive board mentioned along with their support. That is breaking the second major point brought there, and I would like to remind, throughout the debate of the opposing team, they said that IMF is not the solution, but denied to give us a solution. This is how we could define a dependent mindset, where we are escaping the problem and that is a solution, saying this is bad, I'm not going to try this, but I don't have any other solution too. We are to practice an entrepreneurial mindset. As to undergraduates, it is our responsibility to look ahead towards the future. And we were also brought examples of Malaysia did not need an IMF bailout. They just came out of that. Of course, Malaysia did not need, but we are Sri Lanka, we are having a crisis where there is no other solution, and IMF bailout is the solution. Therefore, they said that autonomy will be affected, but they failed to mention on how will the autonomy be affected if the IMF give us a bailout over there. The right of the economy is hindered, and also the autonomy. Again, where are the proof to say any of these figures do exist, any of these assumptions of hindering the autonomy or right to the country is being affected? And also about the 2.39 billion which they said that will be given as praises. Exactly, ladies and gentlemen. Here, the opposing team, I do agree with one point that corruption is the root cause of everything. Then IMF has recognized this root cause and thus giving us as praises. I'm going to give you first, you have to show the growth, sustainability of it, then you will be getting the second one. There are no corruption can be done. And also the fourth speaker did mention about there is no accountability. Exactly again. There is no accountability here. IMF gives the accountability. You are responsible of taking this fund, of this bailout, and then you are to show a growth that we intended to see within this period. You have a target, a destination, and there's someone overlooking you. That's why IMF bailout is the solution for the current economic crisis which has been caused because, just like the opposing team said, because of the corruption that has been existing. And then about the number of times we've taken IMF again. Let's stop. The topic here is current economic crisis. They did not have a solution. We do not have a solution, but IMF bailout, which is there, is also a solution. And also the third speaker mentioned that this is hopeful that we will get IMF or we might not get IMF. Out of the question, we are here to debate IMF is the solution, getting or not. We have to, we will be assessing on that, but that is not the topic today. We are to discuss IMF is the solution here. And also it was said that Kenya misused, the politicians misused everything. But how come you say that because the politicians in Kenya misused IMF, that we are going to have a bad autonomy and hindrance to our autonomy because of IMF? It is totally out of context and conflict to one another. They are facts indeed. And also, loss of jobs. If you have gone through the conditions of the IMF, they have said that according to a recent survey by the Auditors General of Sri Lanka, generally a government sector should have 1 to 113 of a proportion of government service to general public. But currently it is 1 to 13, that is a surplus of over 100. And thus, this surplus is a wastage of human power, which is the most severe wastage of the youth effort. And here, it is an entrepreneurial culture that IMF is trying to establish to utilize this wastage as well. It is not a loss of job, but generating new jobs in the industry. Throughout our debate, we have been saying that IMF addressed the past, will be addressing the past wrongs, present issues, and also the future, which is sustainable and growth, with examples, with proof, with statistics that show on why it is the solution we have currently. IMF is not to be branded as a nightmare. Let us all be enlightened. It is an international body which has no bad intention of controlling another country. They also said that the other country, what will other countries say? We are not to bother about that. Sri Lanka is having a crisis. We have a solution, IMF bailout. Therefore, IMF bailout is the solution for the current economic crisis. Thank you.
That was indeed competitive. Until the results are finalized, the stage is open to the second-year undergraduates of the Department of Finance to add color for the event.
සුනීම සොහොමුල් පිම්වදනින් නුඹගෙන් විමසම් නුඹ මගේ වෙන හේතු දහසක් දැන් පවසම් ආරන්දා मैं तेरी महबूबा महबूबा मैं तेरी महबूबा නුඹ හින්දා සිත සැනසුම් වින්දා නුඹ හින්දා මා සීමා බින්දා
मत से ना पावे पावे दैसे देवते माँ सितम भीला मानित माने सिन्हे सुसे माँ लाई रे रंगवीला सदा स्नेह है मलवई वहुना पिपिहा दुसोलंगे मुआगाव गैवसे दे तोले लगुम सोए सोया संदरे नुयाये मुदुसीत पेनुने लंगवेन माइनित पिया उदावे मा सबवे कसर नरस रंग ना बही तीरे बगाव सीने හිතහීන නෙළුවේ රැතුන්යමේ හිත් පුරා නොදොඩාම දැසේ කවිගීත මැවුනේ දෙතොලේ සුසුම් තුරලා උදාවේ මා සැඳවේ මුදා නෙකසල්න රැස් රඟනාව හිතිරේ tarararat 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 tarararat
That was undoubtedly beautiful. Dear judges, do you need any more time to finalize the results?
IMF bailout and the economic crisis in Sri Lanka is one of the hottest topics in the country at present. In order to enlighten our audience about the topic of today's debate, IMF bailout is not the solution for the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Our humble invitation goes to Mr. Shiran Fernando, Chief Economist of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce.
The Dean, the Faculty of Commerce and Studies, Dr. Narada Fernando, heads of the respective departments, the key organizers, my fellow judges, our debaters, lecturers, students, and well-wishers. Let me first start by thanking the organizers for having me and us as the judges. But let me also wish that you give a round of applause to the debaters. I think they did a fantastic job. I think they did a better job than the 225 that we have in Parliament who are discussing these exact same topics. So, not to say, I mean a great job, and I think better articulated sometimes than how it's discussed there. So I think our future is bright in that aspect, and congrats to all of you as well. So let me give a little bit of a brief overview of the topic as well, and I think good to speak to all of you as you all are completing either your management studies, your degrees related to business, economics, and so on in this faculty. And then I'll get into maybe some of the specific points relevant to our discussion today. So if you look at Sri Lanka's economy, and I think the team outlined the root causes and showed the tree. But if you look at Sri Lanka's economic issue, what I would call the Achilles heel of Sri Lanka's economic woes has always been our fiscal situation, or the fiscal deficit. And that is caused by a lot of the reasons mentioned in terms of corruption or lack of governance, how we've kind of looked at state-owned enterprises, all of that. And that's why, as outlined, we've gone to the IMF 16 times. I think every 3.5 years on average in the last 5-6 decades, we've had to go to the IMF. And we've not completed a lot of programs as well, because not because the IMF took it out of us, but we didn't show enough commitment, we didn't go through the reform. The last 16 times has been mainly because of a balance of payments crisis issue, which has been import-led. So what we often do is the IMF comes, they tell us the problem, we have either reduced interest rates a lot, so there is a lot of spending, there is a lot of credit going in from the banking sector, and imports are going up, and we've had to slow it down. We saw that in 2011, straight after the election cycle, where we did see a lot of vehicle imports coming in. We saw that even in the 2016-17 IMF program, because there were essentially 2 to 3 budgets at that point. You saw the presidential election budget before that. Then you saw straight after the presidential election in 2015, you saw another interim budget, and then you saw the 2015 August election. So all of that has overstimulated the economy, and we have artificially created what we call sugar highs to the economy. And whenever these sugar highs have happened, similar to a diabetic patient, you need your insulin. And the IMF usual recommendation has been increase your interest rates, devalue the currency, and then the adjustments will take place. But this time around, it's very much different. And this is why I would say IMF is one of the many tools which will provide us the solution. Because what happened this time around is fundamentally different. Since 2009, Sri Lanka graduated to become, from a low-income country, we went to a middle-income country. And unfortunately, that was also with the end of the civil conflict. So when the country really opened up for investment, we were no longer able to get what you call concessional financing. from the development partners as much as we enjoyed prior to 2009. So in that absence, what we did a lot was rely on going out into international capital markets. So each year in the last decade, from 2007 onwards till 2020, 2019, each year we've gone out and raised money in the international capital markets, what you call international sovereign bonds. And we've kept raising it, subsequent governments have done it, and what we've always done is use the money that comes from that and improve our reserves. When we have to repay, we'll use from the reserves and repay, or we will issue a new bond and refinance, as one of the debaters mentioned as well. That is sustainable as long as you have market access. That is sustainable as long as the creditors believe you are worthy enough to pay and keep repaying. But what happened in 2019 in particular, and this was even before the pandemic, was we went and messed up our tax system. In 2019, we had 1.7 million tax files. We went and cut income tax rates, we increased the overall threshold, we increased the threshold for VAT, and we made even payee taxes, which us in the private sector pay through our companies. We made that very much voluntary. So what we did was we eroded completely our tax base. And in 2019, December itself, soon after we did these tax cuts, the rating agencies, because to get the market access, there are those who govern this structure, which is the rating agencies, they became negative on Sri Lanka. And that was the start of this 2.5 or 3 year journey that we've been on. Because what they simply said was, Sri Lanka won't be sustainable with the cuts in tax rates, and will end up having to go to the IMF or having to re-borrow at a higher price. And they gave that signal way before the pandemic. So if anyone tells you the economic crisis was due to the pandemic, it's a half-lie. The big driver of it was the tax cuts that we did, which really destabilized the situation. Because 2 years on, that 1.7 million tax files that we have is only 500,000. How can we finance our free education, our free health, with 500,000 people or tax files being in the system? We had 1.2 million people paying payee, that's pay as you earn tax or income or taxation, and that went down to 60,000 tax files only in 2021. So we completely eroded our tax base, and we came to this situation. Then of course the pandemic happened, and what the pandemic did was, because Sri Lanka was already on this watch list, on a negative watch list, it was very easy for the rating agencies to say, countries like Sri Lanka, which have a low taxation, which has low fiscal expenditure, which will have run budget deficits, and also will run current account balance of payments deficits, will be exposed during the pandemic period. So Sri Lanka, along with Zambia, Suriname, all these other countries came into the spotlight. And what we did post that, we had the opportunity, even at that point, even from where the institution I worked in, we did advise the government at that point to go to the IMF, even in particular during March 2020 and even April 2020, go to the IMF, seek the credibility, because what the IMF does is not the $2.9 billion. As you said, that's nothing. That's not enough to give our trade deficit. But what that gives you, it gives you back your credibility, which you lost. It will give you back your market access. Unfortunately, we delayed it. We didn't do it in 2021. And we eventually were forced to do it because we ran out of reserves. Our past strategy of using our reserves to pay off our debt got us through 2020, got us through 2021. But in 2022, we did not have any more reserves to pay. So we almost avoided a hard default. But we had to tell our creditors, listen, we can't pay you now. We are going to engage you in the restructuring talk. So that's kind of the premise of this whole crisis. And the fundamental thing here is the root cause, which I would have loved to see a little bit more on, emphasize, was the fiscal side of it. Now, when you look at the fiscal side of it, there is a lot of elements which you all spoke about: the bloated public sector, the lack of state own enterprise reform, so on and so forth, which historically over the last 16 IMF programs, the IMF has advised us to do, but we have not done. So that is why this program, the success of this program is not the IMF, it is us. It is our policymakers, it's our government, it's us, because we are now being taxed at a higher rate. We have to hold the government accountable to do these reforms. Does the government need to be in the business of running a hotel, for example? Does the government, can the private sector manage that better? Does the government need to be in the business of even running a hospital when you have so many private sector hospitals? Does the government need to run a state airline when so many of our population have not even flown or taken a flight? The taxpayers and the people are subsidizing institutions like this. So these are the questions that we must ask ourselves, and we must ensure that this 17th program will be successful, because 3 to 4 years down the line, we can't go for an 18th program because it's just going to prolong this economic crisis. And if you looked at countries that have defaulted on the sovereign debt, the crisis, countries go through what you call the lost decade. And we are seeing that. 2021, we were an $89 billion economy. This year, with the contraction, with the depreciation, we will become a 75 to $77 billion economy. That's 12 billion lost in 1 year. Next year as well, we might decline. So the economy will shrink. Inflation, some of these other factors will come in. Our purchasing parity will reduce. It's so much more difficult now to afford a lot of things. Even the things that we considered as normal are now becoming luxury. Take your phones, for example. Pre the crisis, maybe it was 100,000 or 200,000. Now it could be the latest iPhone is $500,000. So a lot of things are going to be very much out of our reach, and that's what you call the lost countries that go through it are what you call the lost decade. And we have seen countries like Argentina, which we call serial defaulters. Every 3-4 years, they go and default. They go to the IMF helps them out, they go through a certain part, their political turmoil, so on and so forth, and they are serial defaulters. We can't afford to be serial defaulters, otherwise the economic direction will be really skewed, and we will get stuck in this 3,000 per capita GDP, under 100 billion GDP, and we won't really go anywhere. And your future, and even my future, because I'm still young, will be really compromised. So I think that's the basis that we must kind of think through. It will be difficult reform. Reform is not the reform that you see in terms of your ability to get fuel, your ability to get certain items in stock. That is not reform. Those are just near-term solutions. The difficult reform is some of these reforms related to the tax increases, some of the tax changes, the state-owned enterprise reform, the public sector reform that we need to see, some of the reform to things like the electricity board, so many institutions which have failed us. Those are the difficult parts of the reform, and as citizens, as students, as academia, we have to better hold our government accountable, because it is our interest that they have to manage and not their interest alone. So I think that is why this IMF program is crucial. It won't solve the situation. We can easily get the program maybe by March or April, whenever that comes in. But if we don't execute on these reforms, the program will stall. Then we're once again going to get into this cycle of not having market access, not being able to, because the IMF program also gives you, it's a catalyst. So beyond the 2.9 billion, there are others like the World Bank, the ADB, they're ready to assist. In the last few months, I can't tell you how many meetings we've had with the World Bank, the ADB, so many bilateral countries who are willing to help Sri Lanka. But the number one thing they say is, we want seriousness in terms of the reform agenda, and we want an IMF program to be able to go back to our countries and say, this is why we are supporting this nation to recover. So I think in that context, this situation is dire. We are reviving. There's a little bit of hope and optimism now because you don't have queues, but the difficult reform is yet to be done, and I think that's the push that we need to make as citizens of this country. So my take on the topic is IMF is not the solution, it is one of the many tools within the solution. And I think that's the key thing here. It can be a catalyst to do other things that we on our own need to do. We need to think of, are we going to have a utility which is not adaptable to add in renewable energy? Are we going to think of an airline which will continue to be loss-making, which has to refleet? Are we going to keep subsidizing it? So I think these are the questions that we will need to answer. So just on the topic, I think you all brought out great points on both sides as well. But I think the two fundamental points which I would have loved to see covered was the fiscal deficit. Since you all brought the tree out, I think that was a great way of showing visually something so complex in a very simple manner. So I think that was good. But the fundamental thing is the fiscal deficit, and that has been the issue. That has been the issue even for money printing, because if you look at the fiscal side of it, we're not collecting enough revenue to match our expenditure. So the government always runs into deficits. How is that deficit financed? The central bank raises money through what you call the treasury bills and the bond auctions. When those are not subscribed or the rates are not good enough for the central bank prints money, buys these treasuries, and that liquidity goes to the treasury. And that liquidity going to the treasury is the one that is able to pay public sector salary, pay interest costs, and so on. So that's the cycle that we've gone on. And I think that's how you need to solve the fiscal situation, and which will solve things like the monetary policy and all of that as well. So I think some of those points could have come in a little bit more clearer. The fact that the IMF is a catalyst to other this thing, I think maybe the rebuttal to the point of 2.9 billion, it's not only 2.9 billion, it can be much more. And I think that point could have come in. I really like the point of Malaysia. I think that was something I had jotted down a few things I wanted to see being discussed before you guys started, and one of the things I had was Malaysia. So I'm really glad that you found Malaysia story and you articulated it. I would have loved it had come earlier because I think you could have made a fabulous case around it and articulated that quite better. And even Malaysia, they did the hard reform. When we talk about state-owned enterprise reform, we think of Singapore, we think of the Temasek model, and we think of Malaysia and the Khazanah model. But that Khazanah model happened because of the Asian financial crisis, when Malaysia went through something similar to what Singapore, South Korea, and others, as you mentioned, took place. But they didn't follow the IMF. I think they even reduced interest rates. They got rid of, they were more relaxed on, they took capital controls for 1 year high, and they did a lot of changes which were kind of almost opposite to what the IMF was recommending. But to supplement that, they did their own reform on the state-owned enterprises in terms of their petroleum. Of course, they're resource rich, unlike Sri Lanka, because we don't have oil or something like that. But they were able to bounce back, and that reform really helped them. And they had a 10-year program under the then Prime Minister at that point, who still, I think, who recently lost the elections as well. But they had a 10-year program in which they really did some of these hard reforms. So they're a classic example of maybe you don't need the IMF, but you need to do things, you can do things on your own as well. So I think that point could have been articulated a little bit earlier, but I'm glad that you guys brought it in as well. And I also felt, and maybe my fellow judges will articulate this, I felt you could have, the definition of your topic, you narrowed it to the fact that you're debating only that the IMF is the solution, but you could have expanded it to say, no, what is the solution, which is what they were asking. And you could have given those alternatives around it, which, if you had brought Malaysia, for example, earlier, could have been better articulated as what are the other available solutions. And the fact that we have gone to the IMF 16 times shows that that solution has failed, and that there are other alternatives. So I think maybe that could have come into your arguments as well. But overall, great, I think great I think you'll have done research quite well, and I'm really, it's heartening to see that a lot of you are very knowledgeable and know what's going on currently, and I hope you take some of the things I said in good spirit, and maybe some of the lessons on what's going on in the economy in good spirit, and apply that through your research, because I mean, you guys are going to do theses and things like that, and we need more research, empirical research and studies done on sovereign debt crises, on how economies have recovered, what are comparable case studies to Sri Lanka. So I think these are the research that we need in academia, and from the private sector, we want to be able to see these so that we can understand how businesses, how certain sectors responded during crises. So I think this is even though this is a crisis, this is a real research opportunity for most of you to really work on. So with those remarks, let me take my pause and thanks the organizers for having me and for this opportunity to speak a few words. Have a good evening, good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Shiran, for enlightening us about this timely topic. Next, my sincere invitation goes to Dr. P.D.C.S. Dharmadasa, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Kelaniya, to provide comments to our competitors.
Okay. We experienced quite aggressive but quite interesting debate, and really thank you very much for both teams. Actually, they're really hard. As Mr. Shiran said, actually they researched well, and so let me excuse me from everybody, and let me tell something. I don't want to talk about anything about the economy, because Mr. Shiran explained it very well. So, dear professors and colleagues and dear students, so let me tell something about these two teams. Like both of them actually, I felt both of them really, I mean, well prepared, but considering that opposing team, what they are missing here is that when you make an argument, you need to have facts and examples to convince that. So what I saw, it is actually, it was, those things are missing. For an example, that as Mr. Shiran explained, that Malaysian case, if you talk at first about that one, and then you could have able to build your argument around that. So they repeatedly ask, if IMF is not the not the solution, what is that? So you did not actually, none of you explain what is the solution for that. So you know that when we talk about now in Sri Lanka also, now there are pro-IMF and people who are opposed to that. For an example, me, I'm pro-IMF because I know economy. I'm doing economic research. So I know what is what's going on in the country. So what is necessary for the country at the moment. So like just forget about the corruptions of the country. But now we are in a serious, I mean like in a kind of a serious crisis, and we don't have any other things to come up with that, because you know that in Sri Lankan situation, you know that the level of private sector and the level of government and efficiency level of the government sector, we know everything. So we know that it is very difficult for us to come out of the recession if we don't have any kind of like a strong support. Because in Sri Lanka, unlike Malaysia, Sri Lankans, we don't have that mission. Our leaders don't have that kind of a strong mission. Because in Malaysia, that leaders had that mission. They had capacity to do that, but we don't have. That is we are lacking of. So we need a help from somebody who I mean, who is helping to establish that mission, right? So, but even if like that's opposing team, actually you could have, if you look into Sri Lankan, I mean, domestic economy much better, you could have build a very strong argument to fight with them. So another thing, I don't want to explain like, I mean, point out all the weaknesses one by one, but what I was found is that you pointed out several good points, but you did not have, have capacity to convince them. So next time, actually, when you are preparing to for a debate or anything, whatever the facts you found, that try to find the facts to convince that argument. When you make an argument, you need to find all the related factors to convince that argument, right? Another thing is like just be confident, a little bit more confident. Like when you are talking, we feel like something like when your argument, you don't have in like kind of like lack of confidence. And both teams had that. Among some members, actually both teams had like be confident. Like what you are talking, just tell it like with confidence. You know, so we don't feel you need to convince to the judges that you are confident with what you are talking, right? So that point is missing here. So overall, actually, you both teams perform well, and let's see I wish good luck for both teams, and let's see what are the final results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam. I would also like to cordially invite Ms. Buddhipati Raja, Associate Director, BDO Consulting Private Limited, to provide comments to all debaters.
Thank you. The honorable doctors, I'm sorry I won't remember all the names, as the lecturers, professors, and everyone in the house, including the debaters. So basically, I'm going to take a different stance from what Shiran and Dr. Shampika spoke. I'm going to look at what a debate should be. And unfortunately, some of the criteria that we would have loved to see in some of you was missing. And that was one reason, if you later on look at the marks, the reason why you all have lost. So in a debate, you have to have three main criteria: ethos, pathos, and logos. So ethos is basically you have to establish yourself as whatever the role you have been given. So unfortunately, most of you lacked that confidence. So you need to come up here, right? So basically, you need to come on stage and say, okay, I am the leader. I'm going to give the definition and pave the way. And the first speaker needs to say, I'm going to give the points. Second speaker needs to say, okay, I will give the points and I will do rebuttals. And then go on, and then the conclusion has to be a conclusion, which unfortunately both teams failed to do, because they point blank started off by saying, let me start with the rebuttals. So you would see there was a huge drop in marks for the second round in the speakers in both teams, right? So that is ethos, where you establish yourself. And when it comes to logos, that is, you have to show a logical structure of your speech, right? So you have to develop it. So maybe you have points and rebuttals. Maybe you have more rebuttals. So you have to have a thought process and say, okay, I'm going to start with this. So the team should ideally follow that same structure. So one person can't start with content and then go into rebuttals. So that team effort I could not see. And finally, it was the ethos. So unfortunately, even though this is an economical subject, it is very, very close to our hearts, right? I mean, there are so many ways each of us are personally affected by what is happening around the world. So you could have very easily brought in so much of empathy. And that is why I personally felt some of the deliveries were not strong enough, because you brought in social aspects, but it was never brought out. And also one thing you need to remember is the team has to work as a team. Right? So I felt that both the teams should have been reshuffled a little. That is, each person could have performed better in a different role. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give reasons and names, but both teams I could see that I'm sure the reason why the marks are very similar in the three judges is we all sort of felt the same way. So next time when it comes to the structure, please try to figure it out, not just among yourselves. Speak to your supervisors and also just maybe have not the actual debates like the preliminary and the finals kind of thing, but have certain runs, keep changing your roles and see who would do better. It's not just by seniority or who is famous or who seems to be the toughest person, right? Or, you know, if somebody says, can I please be the first speaker or the second speaker because I can memorize? But that person might actually not be doing it. And coming from that point to a large weakness, a huge weakness that I saw, both the leaders, I'm sorry I have to say this, you all need to be more confident with your points. You all were looking at pieces of paper, right? So you all did not build the team up at all. I'm not bringing you down, but it is something that a leader is expected to do in a debate. So why you're supposed to be in that position as a leader is to uplift your team and make sure you have built the platform for the others to continue. It's not just simply saying, my first speaker, second speaker, third speaker is going to say, you have to bring that up. So unfortunately, some of you were so busy. I'm not talking about the rebuttals. Yes, you have to look at some sort of piece of paper. But when it comes to the start, when somebody is looking at pieces of paper, we sit there in our judging seats and think, okay, what on earth were they doing all this time? And then we begin to think, did the organizers give the speech topic on Monday or was it Tuesday? Right? So so don't let that happen in any time. If you feel you cannot remember something, have a small note in a visible point, yes, but not half of A4 sheets. That is very, very disheartening. But overall, all of you used quite good language, right? The grammar was good, the vocabulary was good, the pronunciation was good, which is very, very basic for a delivery. And then when it comes to gesture and facial expressions, yes, we could see it, and we could see the differences in the different speakers. Like the last speaker, the third speaker, they were very, very forceful. But of course, the start and the conclusion was fairly subdued. But of course, there is no reason that the first speaker or the last speaker shouldn't also use similar strong gestures. There is no hard and fast rule saying you can't use gestures and movement. And then when it comes to your facial expressions and obviously your the way you handle your voice, the pitch, the pace, and the power, right? So there was very subtle changes in some of the speakers in pitch. That is, you had high pitch and low pitch. But when it comes to pace, a very clear demarcation that I saw is when the card comes up, the speed just accelerates. And that is very bad, because then obviously the judges understand that you are also nervous. So don't give that hint to the judges before the judges pick it up after the red card comes up, right? And also, when it comes to the pace, sometimes I feel none of you dared, I would say dared, to use a pause for effect. Right? Now, these are things that Hitler would do. These are things that our Premadasa has done. Right? They give these huge speeches for climax and they pause. And so those things bring a lot of power. So in a rhetorical speech like a debate, that also brings out so much of, I would say, impact on the audience. Because understand, you're not actually here to give some sort of an idea to them, but yes, the judges, they would feel that impact. So if you do that, that is also good. And finally, don't lose out on time. So a few of you who ran over time, which I think we would have circled as overtime, stood the chance to lose marks in the conclusion, right? So maybe you losing marks in points, like, okay, content is one thing, but you losing marks in conclusion where you basically did the conclusion after the timing, I don't think the judges were tough enough to ignore it. Yes, we didn't ignore it, but you all rushed it. So we pretty much didn't have a conclusion, 2 marks. So it would have been like, 1 mark or 2 marks. So don't let that happen. Manage your time, because it was very good. There was always a card popping up saying, okay, 1 minute more. So at that time, you should have started your closing. So overall, I would say it was a very close tie between the 2 teams, and different speakers performed differently. But wish you all the best for the next debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam.
We are back with the official results of the Interdepartment Debate Competition 2022. I once again turn to the audience. Any guesses? Ladies and gentlemen, the championship of the Interdepartment Debate Competition, the Lords of the Debate 2022, goes to the Department of Human Resource Management. Please give them a thunderous round of applause. I now cordially invite Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, accompanied by Professor Ruwan Abesekara, Head, Department of Finance, to felicitate our champions and runners-up. Ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause to the runners-up of the Lord of the Debates 2022, the Department of Commerce and Financial Management. Members of the runners-up team, please come on stage as your name is announced. Dinura Liyanage. S. Sabraja. B. S. D. Vitana. K. Kavindya Dulangi. C. N. Gurusingha. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating the champions of the Lord of the Debates 2022, the Department of Human Resource Management. I kindly request Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, accompanied by Professor Ruwan Abesekara, Head, Department of Finance, to award the Champions Trophy to the champions of the Lord of the Debates 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, give them a big round of applause. This is definitely a proud and happy moment for them because they have been preparing themselves for this competition over a several number of weeks.
I kindly request the members of the champion team to receive their certificates as their name is announced. Rama Sadia Zuri. Ambul Denige Buddhi Ruwani. Lasanti Di Silva. M.G.H. Maheshika. Jude Jonathan. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, there's another title yet to be avoided. Do you know who the best debater of the evening is? Ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause to the best debater of the evening, Hashini Maheshika of Department of Human Resource Management.
To facilitate our amazing debater, I cordially invite Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, accompanied by Professor Ruan Abesekara, Head, Department of Finance. It is high time to appreciate our honorable panel of judges. We sincerely appreciate your time, energy, and dedication in making our competition a success. We truly appreciate it and would like to recognize your effort. To present the token of appreciation to our esteemed panel of judges, I cordially invite Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, accompanied by Professor Ruan Abesekara, Head, Department of Finance. Dr. P.D.C.S. Dharmadasa, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Kelaniya. Mr. Shiran Fernando, Chief Economist, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Buddhipati Raja, Associate Director, BDO Consulting Private Limited. Thank you, sir.
Throughout the course of preparation, there were times of joy, times of disappointment, times full of energy, and times of sacrifice. There was a lot of hard work that was put in by our beloved lecturers, supporting staff, and all our friends behind the scenes. It's time to appreciate the effort of all of them.
Now I cordially invite Nitina Hansaka, Project Manager, Lord of the Debates 2022, to deliver the word of thanks.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's with utmost pleasure I take this opportunity to deliver the word of thanks as the project manager at the grand finale of the Lord of the Debates 2022. First and foremost, I wish to extend my heartiest gratitude to Dr. Narad Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, for gracing this occasion. Further, I extend my sincere gratitude to Professor Ruwan Nabe Sekara, Head, Department of Finance, for the constant guidance and support that was given for us since the beginning of the Lord of the Debates 2022 journey. We are also very grateful for the lecturers of the Project Management and Financing module, Professor Susima Valigamage and Dr. Chatura Lianage, for giving us the opportunity to organize an event of this scale. Further, I extend my deepest gratitude to Mrs. Dhanushka Piyananda, Senior Treasurer of the Finance Students Association, the lecturers in charge of the debate, Ms. Jani Chaturika, Ms. Subhani Tennakon, all the lecturers and the non-academic staff of the Department of Finance for the tremendous support given for us to make this event a success. I would also like to especially thank the panel of judges of the Lord of the Debates 2022 for sharing your valuable time with us to select the best team as the champions and also to select the best debater of the Lord of the Debates 2022. I wish to convey my sincere thanks to all the heads of departments and lecturers from other departments for attending this event, and I also thank all the contestants for participating in the Lord of the Debates 2022, and I would like to congratulate the champions of this competition. A big thank you goes out to my team members who have done their very best to successfully conduct the Lord of the Debates 2022, and I appreciate their efforts towards making this event a complete success. Moreover, I wish to thank all the seniors for their immense support and my fellow batchmates of Department of Finance for being an enthusiastic audience and being present here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitina.
Despite winning or losing, our debaters will surely prove themselves to be amazing speakers with commendable speaking skills. On behalf of the Department of Finance, we wish all the debaters best of luck in their future endeavors. To conclude the event, please rise for the national anthem.